Hello everybody, I'm Brian Essek from How to Automotive, and today I'm going to walk you step by step through the process of changing out the water pump on this Audi Q7. So this has the 3.0 TDI diesel engine in it, and I'm going to walk you step by step through the process of changing out the water pump. So stay tuned for that. Before we get too deep into the repair, the first thing I like to do is I like to go underneath the vehicle and remove the lower splash shields or skid plates. If you're doing this at home, use floor jacks and jack stands and jack up the front end and crawl under here. And you're going to want to remove the front shield here. We don't need to remove the back one, so we're going to just remove the 10mm bolts here at the back of the splash shield here. And once you get all these 10mm removed, then up front there's going to be some T25 torque screws here. We're going to remove all those, and then this splash shield will come down. We removed these shields because we're going to be draining coolant. We don't want it draining all over the plastic shields. Now back up top, we're going to remove the top engine cover. We're just going to lift straight up and then pull out and set this aside. We're going to loosen up the water pump pulley bolts here. To loosen these up, you're going to need a 10mm triple square socket like this. So with the belts still on, you should be able to crack them free. So you want to go ahead and loosen up all three of the bolts here. Now if you go to loosen up these three bolts and the pulley should spin on you, you can use a special tool. This tool right here is made by SP Tools. I will link it up in the description. The way it works is it hooks onto one of the bolts like this and wedges against one of the other bolts. And then the bolt that's not wedged against, you can loosen that up. So you hold the tool like this with one hand and then loosen up the other bolt with the other hand like that. Now to remove the drive belt, you're going to need an E60 Torx bit like this, and we're going to insert it down here into the tensioner. And that's just to the right of the water pump pulley here. So you'll see right where you install the tool here. And then we're going to hook up a ratchet to it, and we're going to rotate this clockwise. And we're going to spring the tension off the belt tensioner. So you'll rotate it upwards clockwise, and you can slip the belt off. And then once you get the belt off, you can release the tension, and then you can go ahead and finish unrouting the belt and take it completely out of the car. I will link up in a description on how the belt routes later on in the video. Now with the belt off, we can go ahead and finish taking out the bolts from the pulley here and remove the pulley. So the water pump just got here, and I thought I would share with you the part numbers. I will link this up in the description of the video along with the coolant and everything you'll need to change it out. One of the things I like to do when I'm changing out parts like this is use the brand new part as a reference of where all the bolts are. So you're going to need a T30 Torx socket like this to remove the bolts. And I'm using about a 1-inch extension with my 3/8 ratchet here, my cordless ratchet, to make quick work of that. So I'll just work around the, basically go all the way around the perimeter of the water pump, removing all the bolts and fasteners. Now on some of these water pumps, the bolts, when you take them out, they could be aluminum and they're one-time use only. And you either have to order new ones or you have to replace them with steel bolts. And the torque specs are different between the two, and I'll share with you what that is here in a minute. So my local Audi dealer did not have the aluminum or the steel bolts in stock. So we matched up the bolts with the thread size and the length, and we ordered a set from our local parts supplier. So there's 10 total bolts holding the water pump on, and having these power tools like this, Milwaukee M12 ratchet here, makes life easy. I recommend using these type of tools for this type of job. I will link up this tool in the description of the video. After removing all 10 of the bolts from the water pump, I just use a little pry bar and a hammer right here and kind of just hit on the nose of the water pump a few times, and that broke it free, and then I was able to pull the water pump off. I also have a drain bucket directly underneath the water pump underneath the vehicle to catch the coolant as it drains out. So now that the pump is off and draining, I wanted to talk to you about the bolts. So the original bolts are made out of aluminum, and these are torqued down to 3 Newton meters, and then you would tighten them down 90 degrees additional turn. And if you tried to reuse them, they would snap off and break. So they're one-time use. We tried to order a set, but they weren't available, so we ordered a set of steel bolts from our local parts supplier. And these are 6mm by 1.0 thread pitch. So before we reinstall the water pump, I recommend you take some compressed air and blow out the bolt holes here and blow out any of the coolant that has drained inside the bolt holes. If you try to install a bolt in there, it'll create like a hydraulic effect, and that will crack the aluminum housing and break it and causing additional problems. So blow out the bolt holes like this. Then after that, you can wipe the housing down, make sure it's nice and clean and there's no debris. So the torque spec for the aluminum bolts is 3 Newton meters plus a 90-degree turn. If you switch over to the steel bolts, it's 9 Newton meters which is about 7 foot-pounds of torque. And there is no additional rotation, just the 7 foot-pounds or 9 Newton meters. So now we're ready to put the water pump back on. Before I do, I just go back over it one last time, blow out all those bolt holes, and then after that I'll use a rag and wipe down the mating surface, make sure everything is nice and clean and dry. Then we can go ahead and take the water pump and install it. It comes with the gasket already on the water pump. Go ahead and install it and start all the bolts by hand. Once you got all the bolts started by hand, then I use my little cordless ratchet here to run the bolts in until they're snug. I just run them in until they're barely touching. I use the variable trigger on this little ratchet here to slowly run the bolts in. And I also did this in a crisscross pattern. Then I switched over to my torque wrench and torqued everything down to 7 foot-pounds or 9 Newton meters. So you'll do this in a crisscross pattern, and then you can go around like in a clockwise or a counterclockwise and go all the way around the pattern until all 10 of the bolts are tightened up. I gave it a little spin to make sure that nothing binding. Then I took a little bit of blue thread locker and put it on the threads of the bolts for the water pump pulley here. And this prevents this bolts from vibrating loose and coming back off. So then I installed the bolts, and now you can torque these down to 23 Newton meters or 16 foot-pounds. I use my little spanner wrench tool to hold the pulley still while I torque the bolts down to 16 foot-pounds. Before I put the belt back on, I took a little clean water and washed off all the coolant that drained onto the pulleys here. And then I use a little compressed air and blow it off and dry off the pulleys. Now we're ready to reinstall the drive belt here. And I printed out a diagram for you guys to show you how it routes. So route it the way it is in the diagram here. I like to start my routing on the crank pulley and then go around the rest of the pulleys and then put it on the water pump pulley last. So once you got it routed about 90% of the way, then you're going to take the T60 Torx bit, put it back into the tensioner, and we're going to rotate the ratchet here clockwise until we have enough slack on the belt to slip it over the water pump pulley here. Now over here on the passenger fender is the coolant reservoir here. We're going to fill it up to the max line in there, and we're going to fill it up with Volkswagen Audi approved coolant. So it's going to be a 50-50 mix with distilled water and coolant. After you got it filled up, then you can go ahead and start the vehicle. You want to turn the heater on to the highest temperature with the lowest fan setting. Make sure AC and defroster, all that is turned off. Now we're going to let the vehicle run for about 10 or 15 minutes. We're going to wait until the thermostat here opens up. You'll feel this hose here warm up and get hot. And then also you're going to feel for the cooling fans to come on. So it may take 15 or 20 minutes, and we're going to double check our coolant level. We want to keep it at the max level inside there. So once the cooling fans have run, the thermostat is open, we can go ahead and take the top cover here and press it back onto the ports on top of the engine bay with these little nipples here and the rubber grommets. It just lays on top. And then you just press it down until it locks in. So you'll just kind of line it up like this, and you'll feel those little rubber grommets, and you just push it down until it locks into place like that. One last step before you're done is to hook up a scan tool. If your vehicle is low on coolant and overheating, you're most likely going to have some code stored in the computer, so you need to clear those all out before you give it back to your customer. So I will be linking up all the parts and tools that I use in this video in the description. That way, if you need to pick up any of those, you can find those links there. I'm Brian from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, encourage you to subscribe, invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again for watching.